Welcome to Nameless Debate Radio, where radioactivity is contagious.
Natural animals that just like occur in nature, right? We would be saving plants.
If we ate animals that occur in nature, here's the thing: that would not be practical at all for the demand. If everyone decided to still eat animals, we still need farms.
All right, that's true. But why would it be all right? So you argued if an alien species came and just used humans as food, right? You said that would technically be unethical.
Yes, I would believe that would be unethical.
Okay, so what happens if the aliens cared for us and gave us food, but then after that, when it was there, when they saw fit that they needed to eat something, they would look at humans and they would weigh it against plants, and they would say humans have more nutrition, and they're just more convenient.
Okay, so nutrition is your argument.
Yeah, if they said so.
Okay, well, we can go down the health argument, but let's stick to the nutrition part. The nutrition part. For instance, let's say with our species, a human. Let's say a human was more nutritious than an animal. Would you eat him?
If a human was more nutritious than an animal, no, because my argument of earlier that we care for our own.
Okay. When it comes to nutrition, that's also a health argument, which plants have all the nutrition you can eat. The thing is, a lot of vegan food actually has more nutrition than animals, and just because they're nutritious does not mean they're healthy.
Correct. But what if they're more convenient to like grow and then feed, and then later on slaughter and eat, in comparison to the plants, which might take longer years? I know in many of the cases the plants take less time. I've had a farm before. We've grown our own crops, but I'm saying for the demand, right? Supply demand. What if the animals gave more food back in comparison to the resources that were required to grow them?
Okay, they gave more food back. Well, the thing about that is that's blatantly false, because plant foods actually, there's a lot more of that we can give back instead of animals.
Is that something that you can prove?
Yes. The fact that if we stopped animal agriculture, we technically would have enough food to basically end world hunger.
Okay. All right. So far you have definitely proven that your standpoint is feasible, but I think my standpoint is also feasible. So I'm gonna say, so you're arguing that it's unethical.
Yes.
That's really hard to argue against, because ethics is it's not an objective truth, but rather a subjective opinion of humans. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. Morals are subjective. Yes.
So if I'm saying, if I'm responsible for providing for an animal, and then I decide to use that animal for my own consumption, I would think that would be completely just. You were responsible for the life, and therefore you can take it.
You're responsible for the life, therefore you can take it.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
All right. So suppose you sustained the life of a creature. I'll have to use an example other than a creature, because that's we're trying to come to that conclusion. That same applies for creatures. So if I build a house, then it's okay if I wreck it, right?
Yes, you built the house. It's not sentient or anything like that.
Yeah, but why would we have to assume why would we have that attachment that if it's sentient, then we can't?
Because if it was sentient, then it would totally want to live. It would not like being killed. It would not like the pain of being killed or anything like that.
Okay, so this is gonna be an argument that I'm gonna use now against you. So, do you believe that killing sentient life is wrong in any case?
Depends on what you mean by that. Like, I would say, if it meant like kill one person, save 100, then I would say that's not wrong.
Okay,
No.
so one sentient life is more two sentient lives are more valuable than one sentient life.
One sentient life is more.
No, two is greater than one.
In my viewpoint, yes. A lot of people will argue that that's not the case. A lot of people would say it's not justified, but I would say it is.
Okay, so now we have insects which are sentient, right? But we kill them all the time. Do you see an issue with that?
Yeah, I mean, insects are obviously less sentient around the bottom of the barrel. That's why a lot of vegans don't kill insects.
All right, so you don't think that killing insects is ethical?
Me personally, I don't think purposely killing insects is ethical. No.
All right, so do you know that when we are farming, right, we have to spray these chemicals on these plants that kill thousands and thousands of insects?
Yes, I'm aware. The thing about that, though, is that it won't be practical to not do that. Veganism is also about practicability. I can't remember the correct definition. Getting rid of animal suffering as much as practically possible. The fact that if we didn't kill those insects, then we wouldn't live, basically.
Okay, but have we weighed the number of sentient beings versus the level of sentience they are against what we wreak out of it, right? So, like for example, we save a cow by spraying the crops, and we kill I don't know how many insects. I'm pretty sure a couple hundred.
Yeah, insects are inherently less valuable than a cow because of the level of sentience. I do agree. Once it goes down to certain levels, it does get less valuable.
Okay, but would you agree that a human is more sentient than a cow?
Yes, I will agree with that.
So why doesn't the same formula apply that we can eat the cow because we're more sentient?
Well, here's the thing about that. Cows are still sentient to a point of around a 3-year-old or so. Or at least that was pigs. The fact that they actually have perceived worldviews, they mourn for their babies, everything like that makes it so it's not ethical.
Suppose we we had a way method of killing them, but they didn't feel pain. Would that still be unethical?
Yes, because here's the thing. If I got, let's say, a person, a retard, whatever, and I killed them and they don't feel pain, is that ethical?
I actually don't know. Well, we're gonna assume, right? We're gonna assume that this person was sentient enough to feel that, right?
Right.
And in that case, it would be unethical. You were not in a position to judge in that case, right?
You're not in a position to judge.
But the thing is, we objectively agree that the human is more sentient than the cow.
Yes, we have more developed brains, so therefore we are more sentient. Yes.
So where exactly is the line drawn where you say, okay, this is non-sentient? The killing off of this sentient being is less significant than for our survival.
Oh, do you mean where?
Yes.
As in
So like you said, the insects can die for our consumption, but larger beings not so much.
Yeah, because we don't have to.
All right, so I think we can actually live without killing animals nor plants.
Explain that, because I don't believe we can.
Yes. All right. So yes. All right. So for example, we can consume milk, right? Dairy products.
I mean, I don't argue. Milk is, I would say, unethical too. So
it is. Why
I
so?
mean, yes.
We're not consuming it. We're not consuming anything sentient.
Okay, you're not consuming a dead body, but at the same time, you also are enslaving an animal, raping the animal, taking away its babies, so you can force the animal to give you milk.
Okay, but that's not necessary to obtain milk. And like my grandfather's farm, he literally has a cow, and naturally, like the cow naturally like gets milk, and he harvests it.
Okay, but the cow has to get pregnant first, and waiting for a bull to impregnate a cow is not practical. You need to do it faster for demand.
But is it not possible that we can have enough cows that we're not killing them, right? We're just using them for the milk, and we're feeding them. It's actually we then become dependent on them, and they become dependent on us. It's a fair game. It's ethical in that sense.
No, I don't see how enslaving an animal and forcing it to give you milk via raping it is ethical.
I don't. I disagree with the raping part of it, right? But I'm thinking if it happens on a natural basis, we let them into nature, right? And they're normalized to our existence, and we're normalized to their existence, and that whenever they're pregnant and they're reproducing milk, we can get some of the milk.
Okay, so you're saying if it was a wild animal, basically in nature, you randomly found it while it was pregnant, the baby stays with the mother, and you just went up there and milked it.
Yes.
I would still say that's animal exploitation, but that's not nearly as big of as a problem. Plus, that it wouldn't be practical when it comes to demand.
But then, like, that is much more. I would definitely argue that's definitely much more ethical than killing the insects to get the plants.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah, you're weighing something that's sentient against something that's what do you call it? What you would call unfair, maybe.
Well, here's the thing: insects, they are sentient, but they are hardly sentient. They are at the very bottom of the barrel.
But does that make a difference that they're sentient or not? Like, it doesn't make a difference because like they're still sentient to the degree, right?
I mean, yes, if something was sentient to the point like it hardly had any knowledge of what's going on, it just did basically what its evolution was told with hardly any viewpoint, then I think it'll be more okay to kill that.
All right, yes, all right. But the thing being is, I'm saying if you get that milk, right? You didn't kill any plants, and you didn't kill any. Of course, and we agree that plants are not exactly sentient, but you didn't kill any plants, and you didn't kill insects in the process to get those plants. But the thing is, if you harvest plants, then you're definitely going to be killing sentient beings.
Okay. Yes, you will be killing sentient beings. The thing about the milk, though, I will admit it is more ethical. I don't think it's exactly completely ethical. Like, for instance, if you saw a dead corpse in the woods of an animal, then I think that's ethical to eat. Perfectly okay. When it comes to just going up to a cow and just milking it, I think that's a little bit exploitation.
Wait, so repeat that last phrase. You said just harvesting the plant, that's okay, right? Because we're not killing anything sentient, right?
You may be killing bugs, but that would be practical when it came for our survival, because humans are technically more important.
But that's the same thing that applies for cows, does it not? I'm saying, where do you draw that line? Where does that distinction come? Like, okay, suddenly I can kill this thing, but I can't kill that thing. Yeah, like there has to be a way to measure that, right?
Just by what's practical.
Well, what's practical?
Don't step in.
Yeah. He took my line, but I was gonna say, like I was asking, how do you calculate that? Is that just a subjective opinion, or is that based upon like some sort of evaluation that you can assess that, okay, our life is this valuable, that insect's life is that valuable, and the cow's life is this valuable, so therefore I can kill the plants.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Let's say we're harvesting plants. Insects are a necessary cause for harvesting plants. When it comes to animals, cows, all that, we would not have to really do anything for them. We don't need to kill them to harvest plants. We don't need to really do anything like that. So I would not say that's practical. When it comes to, getting food, I would say some death would have to be necessary in order to get that.
Yes, I'm agreeing with you. So we do definitely need to kill something to eat, right?
It's basically inedible. I can't say that word. Sorry, but yeah.
But so like, what if I'm, by my assessment, right? I'm thinking, all right, so I kill a cow. That's almost, in my opinion, is comparable to killing all those insects.
So you think killing a cow would be comparable to killing insects?
Well, if you do a genocide, like I'm telling you, like thousands of insects versus one cow, the mass of the insects is greater than the cow.
Give me a minute.
Yeah, this actually gets into the sentience of ant colonies. So you'll find that a single ant, completely unremarkable, right?
Yes.
There's nothing special about a single ant. In fact, I wouldn't even make the remark that it's sentient, right? But a whole colony of ants could certainly be qualified as sentient,
Yes.
right? They tend to work in group favor. They tend to act in ways that are actually severely complex.
They're like
for
a
their
civilization
species.
in a sense.
Yeah, but it's like all together, they're like
Act as a body.
infinitely more complex than one. So
Yes.
yeah, it's just a hive mind basically. So yeah, there actually is an ethical argument to be made that you're in a quantitative sense, depending on the measurement that you're using, you're actually snuffing out more sentient life form in a larger quantitative way by harvesting plants than harvesting
Yes.
cows.
But I think I'm gonna be like the devil's advocate now, right? So I think yes, I think you could technically make the argument that it's more ethical to kill a cow, but I don't think how it's being done at the moment is ethical in comparison to how we harvest plants. Is that a reasonable statement, Spooky Owl?
Say it again.
Okay, it may or may not be more ethical to kill a cow because of the complexity of entire colonies of insects that are killed. However, the way we're doing it today, it's extremely manyfold more unethical to kill the cows the way we're doing it today.
I mean, I agree. Is especially with the way we're doing it today, it is very unethical. Like I said, also there's the intention fact. When it comes to killing insects, it's completely really unintentional. You can't really help that. When it comes to killing a cow, there is intention there.
Okay, wait. So you're saying the subject of the killing, right? The subject of consumption is not being. The subject of consumption is not sentient, and therefore it's okay?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The subject the subject that is sentient is not the subject of consumption.
Actually, you missed the better argument, Vivi, if you'd allow me to make it.
Okay, sure, I guess. I'm not the best debater, but I was still wondering what Spooky Owl just said a second ago. I'm gonna try to reiterate it. You said because we're not intending to kill the insects, it's okay, but because we're intending to kill the cow, it is.
I say intent does play a role when it comes to it, yes.
Yeah, but that's actually the issue with the argument, right? Is if you're going to make an argument from intentions, then this becomes a lot easier, right? Most meat eaters actually don't intend to hurt animals. This is fairly clear if you actually watch, like you could just watch videos on like they'll have like a slab of meat out on a table, and then behind the desk they'll act as if they're killing like a pig, and you can hear it squealing, and then they'll be like really shocked by this and unsettled. And you'll find this throughout society, this cognitive dissonance, and also the intention also could be made that, like, let's throw that out of the equation entirely. Let's say that people understand that cows are dying, right? But the intention is to feed the human species in a way that's nutritious. They believe that they need meat to survive. So the intention is it's either them or us. And I think even vegans would agree that if it was a choice between animals and humans, that they would always choose humans. If we had to kill animals to survive, to eat them, most vegans would agree with that.
I would agree with that.
So if intentionality is actually, it has to do with a cognitive goal, right? So like you have an intention, you're going to procure that, right? So intention, really, intention can be anything, right? So like the intention in killing somebody, murdering somebody, could be seen as virtuous in a single variable to somebody. In the same way, you could isolate this single variable of trying to, extend the human species, and you could say that it's actually a desirable intention, right?
Yes.
So you could say in the same fashion that it's the intentionality of harvesting plants and the intentionality of harvesting animals is both virtuous from this standpoint. It's a pretty bad argument, actually. It's not a good one. It could be used against you.
Yes. I agree with that, and I think Spooky Owl can agree with that to a degree. I won't speak for him, but
Yeah, I never said intention was the whole thing. I said it can play a part.
yes.
It's a part of it.
Oh my God! Cross just posted a whole paragraph.
Did you guys finish?
I think we did finish to an extent. Spooky Owl is still on his point, and I'm kind of still on my point. And Zycon over here, he had his own 2 cents about it. I think I do agree with both arguments. I respect both arguments, but I still hold the opinion of
Also, you can say it.
say what?
You can say it.
My opinion?
You can say the debate. You agree with both of their argument.
Yes, yes.
Damn, you were doing so fucking well with that insect shit. Biggest clap fucking history of the
Yeah, I
world.
fucking need to learn how to argue that better. I need to watch more shit. That's for sure.
Spooky was fucking BB at the start.
Are you a vegan, Spooky?
Yeah, I'm a vegan.
Yeah, you're a vegan. I was a vegan a couple months back. I was vegetarian for 3 years, and I was vegan for 8 months.
Oh yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah.
I used to know you. I heard about you on Ask Yourselves Discord a while back, like forever ago.
Yeah. So wait, you're part of that Discord? Yeah, they hate me there.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, but the thing is that none of them will engage with my arguments at all. So
pussies.
I'm sure you're aware of the debate I had with Isaac, right?
How long ago?
A while back.
I honestly don't know. I lose track of these debates.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, most people over there who are aware of me because of AY, they know that debate. So, oh yeah, sure. But the whole vegan argumentation is kind of it's actually kind of bad over there, because really, if you really want to get down to like what Isaac is saying, is that you can be logically consistent, but the logically consistent position of which you take is going to be ridiculous, right? And how he does this is he's trying to get you down to a point where you're saying like it's permissible to kill retards, but in reality, you don't need to concede that. And even if you do name the trait in such a way that it's basically the society of which we live in, they're still going to say that they disagree with it on the grounds that it's outrageous. But that's kind of fallacious, because the way of which they appeal to it prior is society would think that you're nuts if you wanted to kill retarded people. But it's funny how they don't frame it that way when you answer it in such a way that it's basically modern day society, because they know they can't make that argument, because they know that modern day society is perfectly fine with mass slaughtering cows, chickens, like all of these farm animals. So it's kind of a weak argument, because
I don't know.
it kind of
what they're doing is a
itself.
Consistency test to see if you're consistent.
Why is it just a consistency test if when you answer the questions, how they condemn it is saying that it's a ridiculous argument because most people wouldn't accept it? I mean, I agree that it could be used as a consistency test.
It would sound absurd to most people. I doubt most people will agree with killing retards.
Yeah, but that look. You could name the trait in such a way, and I can do it for you. You could name the trait in such a way that it just basically mirrors modern day society. Do you think that most people find modern day society to be absurd?
No.
In terms of killing farm animals? Okay, you don't.
Yes. Well, I mean, like you have quite a lot of few people, especially in the youth, right? That will see something. There's something off by killing sentient life, like Spooky Owl was arguing, right? And I think so too. Like there is obviously nobody really thinks about what they're eating, right? It's like they don't think that it's coming from a live creature. But the thing being is, I argue from the standpoint of necessity, and
yeah, which is a fine. That's actually how I used to argue for it too. But you see, the thing is that even when you evaluate this from like a advocacy standpoint, you'll find that most people who hear the message of veganism reject it, right? So again, it's like you're going to have to make the argument that even the modern day society which we find ourselves in, most people are actively thinking that's absurd whilst in it. But do you think that name the trait always produces absurdities? Are you under that
I'll
impression?
say that again.
Are you under the impression, just both of you guys, are you under the impression that name the trait always produces necessarily absurdities?
Name the trait, you said?
Yeah. I know Spooky Owl is aware of it, so maybe he can answer the question.
I agree that if you do not acknowledge that the fact, animals versus humans, and that it will produce an absurdity if you have one standard for another.
Sure. Okay, I can answer name the trait then for you in a way that doesn't produce absurdities. So do you want to hear it?
Sure.
Okay. So let's just pretend you've run the name the trait argument on me, okay? So I'm going to name the trait. The trait is my preference. How do you argue that?
Okay, well, preference could be anything. It could be my preference to murder someone. Does that make it right?
Okay. So I'm totally not trying to be mean here, but that's a classic mistake people make in there. And I'm going to tell you why it's actually a fallacious argument. That's what we call a non sequitur. I've given you an argument, right? And this argument can be called A, right? And A is my preference. So my preference is a specific preference of which is applied to me. And these preferences, you could basically assign letters to them. And like, let's say it's just like, we have an assortment of like 24 letters. Now that's my specific sequence of preferences. Now let's say that you have another preference. Let's call that B. That's an entirely different assortment of letters, right? Still 24, but entirely different sequence. Now you've given me B and you said, well, you've given me A, but what about B, right? So that's a classic example of a non sequitur, because the conclusion, the premises that you've given me don't naturally fall to the conclusion. So just because other preferences exist doesn't mean that my preference is wrong, right?
That is a good argument.
Yeah. So it's just a textbook non sequitur.
No, but I think that then we have the issue of defining it, right? So you said, what was your name? The what is it called? Yeah, you said you said your, I forgot what it's called. What was it called?
Oh no, what are you talking about?
You said the name of a preface or something like that. And you said your thing was preference.
Yeah. It's like my list of categorical preferences. So like when you say like name the trait, right?
Okay,
if
name the
if
trait.
You're aware of the name the trait argument.
Name the trade.
Name
the trade. Like trade as in like, trading something else, right?
A trait can be anything, right?
Oh,
Even
traits.
Ask yourself. Yeah.
Was it T?
Trait.
Okay.
Yeah,
You said your name of trait was your preference, right?
My categorical set of preferences. Yes. Yeah. So like the proclivities of which I find myself in. So this could be, you could actually make this from like I could make a Kantian argument for this. I could make a emotivist argument for this, but just like, let's say for just the sake of argument, so I'm going full emotivist. I'm saying like, I have a set of natural proclivities. That's what falls under. So I just naturally gravitate towards positions, and that's what this is.
Okay.
But
the thing is, your position cannot be generalized to all other cases, right?
Yeah, I can't. You can't say. So you have a preference, but what about somebody else's preference? Because then you're using an argument of which I haven't proposed, and that's a non sequitur. It's engaging with an argument that I haven't made.
Okay, I'm just assuming that there's because when I hear the statement, I feel like there's an implied that everybody can have their own preference and every preference is valid.
Everyone can have their own preference and every preference is valid in the name the trait argument. It depends on like what perspective you're looking at it from. Like for instance, every preference can be logically valid and another preference can't be applied to scrutinize it. Does that make sense?
All right, so you said every preference can be allowed,
yeah, like
but
they're logically valid. So, like in other words, like preferences really can't contradict, especially in like an emotivist framework, because, like, well, I mean, I don't know. I maybe you guys probably aren't too familiar, but like if I'm like pleading moral particularism, for instance,
all right,
then that kind of gets around the issue of like universal principles. So I can just skirt that issue right there. So I don't need to even follow like base guidelines. I can just say that I'm emoting to particular situations.
I see.
Yeah. So like it like even that issue, you can't like appeal to principles to a particularist. So there's so many ways around the name the trait argument that like you could basically make, I mean, instead of like, I mean, hundreds of arguments to combat it, but this one I found to be the most effective because I don't think really anybody who runs it has an answer for it. And honestly, I tried to plead like to take down its formal validity, but I don't even feel that's necessary. I feel like it's just engage with it as if it is formal, and then just give an answer to it that they can't combat, and they can't even say it's absurd, right? Because if you say that my preferences are absurd, you'd have to prove that the larger society around me finds my actions to be absurd, generally, like eating animals and stuff like that.
No, but you'd have to first make the agreement that that's both, you both can agree with that makes something absurd. Because a lot of people can say most of society can get it wrong, right? We witnessed society get it wrong a couple of times in the past. We've committed world wars, and most people being agreeing. Yes.
Sorry, just rewind for a sec because I interrupted, but you can go ahead.
Yes, you said preference can be proven wrong by a group like by the majority of society agreeing with that.
No. That's not what I said, right? From the perspective of name the trait, right?
Yes.
The condemnability of an argument is based on a wider society having accepted or not accepted it, right? That's just producing an absurdity. It's not saying that it's wrong or right on its own logical merits because of that. It's just simply pointing out the fact that it is absurd. So that's where the argument leads to. It's not trying to say that you're illogical. It's saying that you're logical, but most people would disagree with you. So what I'm saying is, I'm trying to create an argument of which is logically consistent, but in addition, isn't absurd to the larger societal standard. And I think my preference kind of encapsulates that.
That's very notable.
So, this kind of, I don't know. I mean, do you have an answer to this issue, Spooky? Or you just
wait? What? Say that again.
Do you have an answer to my preference argument, or?
I mean, I'm just saying, using your argument, I could say my preference would be to create a Holocaust, you know.
But that isn't using. Are you aware of Kantian? Are you aware of Kantian categories? Like the way that categorization works in Kantian ethics?
Not really, no.
Are you aware of moral particularism? Like any of these things?
I'm relatively new to this, so I can't.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Well, it's kind of weird that you say that, right? Because to say that, you'd have to say, well, do you have an objection to people having a categories in their head? So like the category of chair, do you think that people should be allowed to have categories like that? Like, for instance, I could deem a chair to be anything that is a sitting utensil, but in addition has places for me to rest my arms, right? Is that objectionable as a category? It's not an actual physical thing. It's a cognitive, construction.
Mm-hmm.
Is that objectionable?
It's I don't think it's objection, but is it objectional? As in, can it be objected?
No. Is it objectionable to have categorizations, right? Because if you're saying that, well, then I mean, I guess I can really just disagree with you there. But I don't think it's objectionable for people to have cognitive categories, and certainly I don't think that any one cognitive category is better than the other. So, for instance, I have a specific cognitive category. I can argue from just a Kantian perspective now. I have a cognitive category in such that some things are permissible and such things are dispermissible, right? So, for instance, killing animals is permissible, right?
Okay.
And that's just because I externally visualize it empirically, and then I cognitively categorize that as a good action. So that's a Kantian argument. Saying that this argument is basically the means by which anybody could justify anything is like saying people have different categorizations cognitively. And I agree with you, but I don't think that means that it's ridiculous to have cognitive categories. So it seems
you have posed great arguments. I can't counter at the moment. And I'm agreeing with them at the moment. I'm agreeing with them. I'm going to have to do a little bit more research and try to think it out more thoroughly in order to be produce an opinion and conclusion.
Yeah, that's a principled argument, by the way. That's because of the way that Kant saw this. that's like a completely principled argument, but I could make an unprincipled argument. I could just plead moral particularism and emotivism, gravitating towards particular positions, and then I don't really think anybody has an objection to that. That's pretty unobjectionable, and you can't actually use moral particularism against itself. You can't say that it justifies anything, because moral particularism doesn't care about that. It just cares about the way people conduct themselves in terms of moral thoughts, actions, and judgments.
So we, like, as a society at the moment, have that moral particularism about, like, for example, human life, how it shouldn't be killed. Murder is a crime.
Well, I mean, I think that it has to do with moral particularism is in contrast to moral generalism, which is the idea that moral principles do explain moral action, thought, and judgment. And then particularism is the idea that moral principles don't explain moral thought, action, and judgment. So basically what I'm saying is that if I say that I'm a moral particularist, I can just say that, really it's a natural extension of saying that I'm just somebody who isn't an actual consciousness, which, I mean, that's even deeper. That's even more woke, fam. So, I mean, look, the name the trade argument, this is kind of why I don't find it very persuasive, right? Is because it purports to produce absurdity, but in reality, it actually doesn't do that. Like, if somebody answers the name the trade argument in a quote unquote absurd way, it's like, it's only absurd because they've gotten them to, because AY has gotten them to concede on this like ridiculous premise that they should kill retards because some arbitrary principled standard of which they've created in the discussion. It's like, well, intelligence is valued. It's like, and then we could get into like the kind of absurdity of picking one trait to pretty much describe anything. It's like a steering wheel. Does that encapsulate a car? I'm gonna need to like put some wheels on that and like an exterior body and like windows. It's like, it's kind of a malformed argument. I certainly wouldn't say that in terms of like the ways in which it could be written, it's always informal. But even if it is formal, I don't think
so.
It could ever be sound.
Particularism is when you would use. Wait, I'm trying to restate it because that helps me understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's when you use something that, like, I really caught on to the steering wheel example, right? So use part of something to describe an entire thing, and it's what again? It's absurd if most people disagree with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, the categories, and this is kind of the ironic thing with AY, is he doesn't really produce any like deductive arguments in this area. He's actually appealing to induction.
Who's this?
Of which he doesn't even. This is AY. He's actually appealing to induction when he makes these claims, because what he's saying is, I don't have any actual like even wider inductive data, but I'm just going to make like this intuitive inductive claim that most people would find this absurd. It's actually not it's not like a methodological statement. He's not saying this based on like studies. He doesn't have like the Oxford study on killing retards for food. He's just kind of pulling it out of his ass. It's like an inductive intuition.
All right.
It's anecdotal, in other words.
Okay, L has tagged me. Oh, thank you. I'll read that. No, that's not reading. That's a video. I'll watch that. Yes.
That's his channel.
Okay.
That's who Ask Yourself is.
Yeah, and don't take my word for it. By the way, watch his videos and critic yourself. Like, I'm not here to quote unquote slander the guy. I don't like his arguments. I don't mind like I don't want to get into his actual personal shit, because everybody goes on and on and on about him personally, but I'm not interested in attacking his character.
Well, I'm gonna look into it. I always love these people that I don't necessarily love the people. I love listening to these people and their opinions and their reasoning to getting to their conclusions. Yeah. And it's always enlightening. Thank you so much.
It's great to have an open mind, dude. Like, seriously, it's like always look into shit. I mean, I'd say that the one personal qualm I maybe have with Ask Yourself is just the way he treats people is really shitty. But I mean, that's
every person has their own thing going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully, one day we can I think even if we are able to prove the most questionable things at the core of our society, then we'll still have people that just deny it. Which
I'm
is
sorry.
sad.
What? You're even
Like,
if we
Even if we find an objective way to prove like the biggest questions at the center of our society, for
Mhm.
example, existence of God or where our morals come from, right? If we have like a solid way to prove that stuff, and we can all the intellectuals agree on it as a valid way to come to those conclusions, I still think people were gonna deny it.
I don't really think you're gonna ever come to some objective conclusion about these things. You're always going to have you're always going to have your base presuppositions that are completely unjustified. Like,
Yes, but you can have like assumptions that most people can agree with, though.
yeah, but that in itself is a presupposition.
Correct.
So it's like saying my presupposition's right because I have a presupposition that says that my presupposition's right.
Yes,
A
we
little.
need to. We would need to have a way to validate a precept without using the precept, like the logic using the precept.
Yeah, but then that would just be something behind that would need to be justified, of which you couldn't. Theoretically, it's even not possible.
Okay, so I know there's this argument about linear regression, right? And not linear regression, horizontal regression. I don't know,
Mhm.
but basically it's not horizontal, vertical. But basically, it's saying that if you have something sitting on something else, sitting on something else, sitting on something else, right? That means eventually he's gonna have to sit on a base, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like logic that most people would agree with, and it's not actual fact, but it's just like that's how we I don't know how to say it. It's just what we accept as a society.
Right.
And so I'm saying like a precept like that saying a tower cannot stand without a base, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that an objective precept, or is that a more of opinionated? Is that subjective?
I would have to think about that really, really hard, actually. But my immediate inclination is subjective.
All right. I'm gonna also try to think about that for a long time. I think there's actually math, right? I think math would be able to prove that somehow, like taking a limit.
Math is a presupposition.
Ah, but most people can agree with math. So yeah, like I said,
But saying that makes it right is a presupposition.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of impossible to. Unfortunately, it's just kind of impossible to get past this.
Yes. Oh man, that kind of sucks. But yeah, hopefully we get closer, we converge our presets to be similar, if not exactly the same. Should I be reading this?
Reading what?
What one and Sign Q and Bucky have to say between each other?
It really doesn't matter.
But yeah, Spooky Al, do you have any questions about my argument or?
I will have to do more research into actual debating because there are still a lot I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Who actually convinced you to be vegan?
Let's see. Vegan, I'm honestly not sure who convinced me. It was more of I didn't like how animals were being treated.
Mhm.
So no one really convinced me. I just saw what happened on farms and shit, and felt like killing was wrong. So
Yeah, I'm actually like the exact opposite, where I don't care about animals or animal suffering. I just
Wow.
just don't.
And I'm like in the middle road right here, because I believe animal suffering is bad, but it's not necessarily like. I had a few arguments from a few people. For example, we're not really sure that they feel or not, but I would want to assume that they do. But where was I going with this? So I care for animal life, and I feel like they're like killing them for our consumption is more of a sacred thing, more so than just something we do for enjoyment.
what do you mean a sacred thing?
Like consider our survival sacred. Killing an animal in that case is sacred because it's for our survival.
Honestly, I
But
think
like
it's more about.
said
Oh, sorry.
before, it's not though.
Say what?
Like I said before, it's not. You don't need to kill.
Oh yeah. I know. I understand. We made this argument. You could just eat plants, right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying, when I'm eating an animal, right? I'm thinking about what we had to go through in order for me to eat it, rather than it's okay. It's not. It's just an empty life. Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, I guess.
I guess it's
I
more.
don't, I don't see how that makes a difference.
Yeah, it does not make a physical difference, right? But in my mind, I'm not just I'm not making the assumption that animal life is valueless.
I mean, I don't think I make that assumption, but I think that I just
Go ahead.
care when I see an animal get slaughtered. Right? That's not something that I categorize as a bad action when I see it.
Fair enough. I think it depends. If it's for consumption,
I could I don't know. You could use that argument with rape. I don't care if someone rapes someone. It's still.
Yeah. You could use that argument with rape. What's illogical about it?
Oh wow.
It's just that I don't care isn't really an argument.
No, it actually is though. Logically speaking, it is.
Okay, but I mean, would you say it's completely justified if I went up to your mother, raped her, killed her, ate her, and said, "Well, I don't care"?
Normatively, no. Logically, it's consistent. There's nothing illogical about it. There's nothing that breaks the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded battle. There's nothing.
It is absurd, though, right?
It's not normative. Yeah, sure. I mean, I certainly would find it to be absurd. It would also be hurtful, right? It would also be a bad action. So, yeah, I mean, that goes against my preferences, right? Their preference goes against my preference. So essentially, but you do realize though that you are using preference to justify your worldview, right?
Me or Spooky Owl?
Spooky Owl. You have a preference towards ending animal suffering, which is actually a condemnable. It's not a condemnable. It's admirable thing to want, but it is at the end of the day. Basically, if you reduce it, it's just a preference. We're both hard materialists here, right?
It is a preference. I will say that. Yeah.
Okay, so you're using preference to justify what's moral, then, right?
I mean, yeah, morals are subjective. Therefore, I guess they are technically based on preferences.
Okay, so like if somebody has a preference to rape, how is that different than your preference that you want to end animal suffering?
Well, the thing is, though, one causes harm.
Well, yeah, but you have a preference towards not causing harm in the same way the person has a preference towards causing harm.
So the precept that I would guess that one would have to make is that harm is bad. Harm is
yeah, you could presuppose that, but then the other person could just presuppose the opposite. So it's like what I'm trying to make him realize is that at base, right, pretty much all moral action could be categorized as preferential reasoning. So what you're saying is preferential reasoning is bad because it goes against my preferences?
Okay.
Basically, that's what you're saying, right?
It's a hard one, actually.
It is a tough. It is a tough cookie.
Yeah, it is. Because it's like kind of, I guess it is a preference to value well-being of not wanting someone to be harmed. But I don't know.
I mean, again, I think if we're hard materialists here, there's really no. I mean, it's just an inescapable reality that we use preferences to justify what's moral and what's not moral. So you have a preference towards not seeing animals being harmed. I have a preference towards eating meat, and I don't care about animals being harmed, all of which could just be labeled as preference. And how do you condemn mine using preferential reasoning if you're using preferential reasoning?
So I think that ultimately, in order for one to convince you otherwise, they would have to use one of your own preferences against you.
my other preferences and
Yes.
see which one weighs out. Yeah, no, that's true. But the kind of fundamental question that I'm getting at here with Spooky Owl is it really logical to use preferential reasoning to condemn preferential reasoning?
It is not. It's not logical.
Okay.
It's not reasonable to use your preferential reason against my preferential reason. No.
Now,
You have to use my own preferential reason against
yeah,
myself.
so this is great because this is exactly the area of which I wanted to get you in, because this is getting into the analyzing of actually name the trait as an argument. Because there's something about name the trait that you guys need to realize, especially Spooky Owl, because I think he's been around it a lot more than you. But basically, the selection of traits is picked based on preferences. So when I say that my preference, that my trait that I name is my preference, basically I'm saying what everybody else is saying. I'm just being more to the point about it, right? So when somebody says I value intelligence, they might as well just be saying my preference, right? My preference is to value intelligence. So really at the base of what they're saying is my preference. The only difference is I'm skipping that step and I'm just going right to it and saying my preference.
Okay, so you say.
But the difference is that when I say my preference, Isaac has to say, well, what if that preference was, what if somebody else had a different preference than you and it was used against you in a harmful way, or X, Y, or Z scenario in which another preference was used? And then in the case of which I name intelligence, he completely skips that step of my preference. He doesn't actually mention that argument, even though I'm still reasoning. And the reason why he's not going to do that is because he realizes that he's using preferential reasoning to justify his worldview, whilst condemning preferential reasoning. So it's actually hypocritical. He's actually being illogical. That's insofar as how he used it. It's not written on. It's not written anywhere in Name the Trait, but insofar as how he uses it, he's actually being illogical because he's using his own preferential reasoning to justify his worldview. And when somebody else says my preference, he'll say that that's illogical because somebody else could have a different preference of which you don't like, but he's using preferential reasoning to justify his worldview. So it's a viciously circular argument.
I'm going to say that perhaps preference is something that is not usable to debunk somebody else's preference, but rather it is kind of important that one has an open preference. I would assume if you want to have an intellectual conversation, the one that's kind of beneficial, maybe enlightening.
Normatively, I actually agree with you. I think people should be open, but that in itself is a preference.
Yes, unfortunately, but like.
So it's like.
Yes, it's a noble preference. Which is that's also subjective. But I'm just saying, like.
Basically, this is the problem though, because it's like the moral argument could basically be framed in terms of like a precept almost, because a precept is trying to make you realize that everything is fundamentally presuppositional. In the same way, people who make moral arguments, you could just point out to them that everything is fundamentally preferential. So it's a vicious cycle. I mean, I think that there are ways around this in terms of normative ethics, but in terms of descriptive, what is logical and illogical, there is pretty much no way around this. And I do think in terms of my evaluation, I think that Isaac is actually being extremely fallacious with his argumentation. So I wanted to point that out to you, Spooky Owl, and if you ever feel like maybe you've picked this out for yourself, or maybe you think about it more and you actually do agree with my argument, you might want to bring it to Isaac and see how open he is to it.
All right.
You may want to confront him on this point, because he doesn't really like being confronted, but I've desperately wanted to see somebody bring this point up.
Who's Isaac again?
Ask yourself.
Yeah, ask yourself.
I'm gonna be guessing Batman.
No.
Okay, thank God. Because
Isaac's Ask Yourself, the dude I posted the YouTube video link to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Spooky, I think I just want to be clear though here. Just because I'm saying that Isaac illogical arguments, I'm not saying that veganism is illogical. Veganism is actually a logical position, and I actually want to say that I think veganism is the way forward, and I think that veganism is the future of the human species. And I don't even really have any doubts of that. But I do think that people like ask yourself, give vegans who are philosophical a bad name because he uses these arguments that aren't very good.
Yeah, so I have that. I see that happening across a lot of different stances in opinions. Like a lot of people have a shared opinion, and they have this leader person figure that really makes bad arguments for them. And it's sad.
Well, I mean, you find this everywhere.
Oh, by the way,
People gravitate.
I'm gonna have to go really soon. So I appreciate this talk. It was very very enlightening. I learned a lot. Thanks so much, guys. And hopefully see you soon. Maybe tomorrow.
Same.
Take care, guys.
Well, that was interesting.
Yeah, well, Spooky Owl just realized I'm a total sophist. I'm a total sophist, and I have no actual arguments, and I'm just, yeah, basically that.
I had to learn more about debating before I claim anything like that.
No, totally.
Yeah,
I
Bucky, did I
think
start
that
drama with
I think
Cross
that the
again?
best way to. Sorry, what coconut?
Yeah, I was asking my buddy here, Bucky, if I started Cromwell the dross again between him and Insightful Inquiry.
Maybe.
Oh, well. Sorry, go ahead.
Jesus. You want to go into like here? Like, bada bing, bada bing, bada.
Thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe, and join us in the Nameless Debates Discord. We hope to see you there.